This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Vanessa Feltz.
Let me tell you what we're talking about this hour. You can see the front page of The Sun. You can see it all over social media. I was too scared to come out as gay. That sacked referee David Coote revealed he turned to cocaine over fear of coming out in the macho world of the Premier League. He said he needed drugs to escape after being forced, he felt, to hide the fact that he was gay. And we thought we would discuss on the radio the situation with being LGBTQ plus and the situation of coming out, whether that still happens these days, what it's like doing it to family, to parents, to colleagues, to friends, if it's a kind of formal thing where you have to kind of make an announcement, or whether people just generally get the gist, whether the stigma and the fear has long since disappeared because, it's impossible now, isn't it, to lead a life where you don't have lots of gay friends, acquaintances, relatives. You can't be the only gay in the village anymore. There's no such thing as that. Life has changed. We've all, you might think, progressed, particularly in that sphere. Or maybe you want to tell me, no, actually, it's not really like that. Let's discuss this with David Haigh, human rights lawyer, LGBTQ plus campaigner and former managing director of Leeds United. He was the first openly gay managing director of a football club. Hi, David. Good to have you on the show.
Hi, good afternoon, Vanessa.
Was it a big deal? Was it something that was an ordeal in such a macho profession, in that environment, to be open about your sexuality? Did you need to be?
I mean, oddly for me, no. And, Leeds at the time when the people I worked for purchased the club, which is about 12 years ago now, had a reputation, dirty Leeds, and that it was aggressive and violent. But it's not something that I ever experienced. I would never, I cannot recall ever being abused by the fans because I was gay.
Right.
I got abused because I was a little bit chunky at the time. I was, and so Who Ate All the Pie songs being sung at me by 20,000 men. But, you expected that type of abuse. But I was fortunate, but I didn't see that abuse from the fans because I was gay.
And David Coote says, it was such a macho atmosphere. It was such a particularly kind of, I don't know what you call it, but a particular kind of environment where he just felt that he would come in for all manner of abuse and hatred and condemnation and everything else. Do you think that is still the case, or do you think that things have changed?
I think things have got better, but if you look at racism in football, or take that as an example, that's something that was even more horrific 10 years ago than it is now. It has improved, but it's still there. I mean, I remember very well when we went to Millwall with Leeds and sitting at, near a pitch, and there was a young man and what looked like his son, and the most horrific abuse about one of our black players came out of his mouth I've ever heard. And even now I still remember it 10 years on. So, as a referee, you are going to get abuse. And there's the light side of someone saying something silly about, oh, ref, are you blind? And then there's the very severe side at the other end where someone is being abused because of who they are, what they look like, etc. And that's completely unacceptable. And it still does happen. So I can understand when this particular ex-referee said, well, I was fearful of abuse. He would have got some. But obviously that doesn't necessarily excuse the things he did.
No, of course not. And we're not trying to excuse the things he did. In fact, we're not even talking about things he did. That's a different show at a different time. What I'm really talking about is the kind of process of coming out, and I wonder whether it's a kind of something that has over the years become much less of an ordeal, something that people think less about, talk less about. It's more matter of fact and not such a kind of obstacle to overcome, or whether for some people it's still enormously fraught with problems and dangers.
I think it really depends. I mean, I grew up in kind of rural Cornwall, where I probably was the only gay in the village when I was young. And so for me, it was never, there was never this big coming out moment. Particularly when I was at football, people just got used to seeing my partner who was male. It was never a big issue.
Yeah.
The issue that I had was that the then owners were an Islamic bank and they weren't best pleased with me for that. But, but I never experienced it. But I know people that have, and I know people that are in, certain parts of the world that really struggle with, and we look at, for instance, if we look at the Middle East, a lot of countries in the Middle East own football clubs, in those countries, it's not just wrong, they don't just look at it being wrong to be gay, it's a criminal offence with the death sentence. So, some people will have those issues, some people won't. I was fortunate, I think, because for me it was easy. There was never a big coming out moment. I was very much accepted. My sexuality at Leeds, I mean, the fact that the football club were losing, that probably wasn't very, wasn't a happy thing. But, I think it's different for everyone.
But what about at home, though, as the self-proclaimed only gay in the village in Cornwall? What about the issue of, schoolmates or parents or teachers and that kind of a thing?
Yeah, I did get some. I mean, I remember when I was at Scouts, I mean, this is one of my kind of early kind of discrimination points, if you like. I remember the chap who was in charge at Scouts had a private conversation with my mother to say that I wasn't the sort of kid they wanted in it. And that's something that just wouldn't, I didn't even know I was gay at the time. I was probably, Scouts, about 10 years, 11 years old. Something that's still stuck in my mind, but it's not something that I've kind of let affect me in a negative way. Probably one of the reasons I'm a human rights lawyer now. Do
you think your mother understood what the Scoutmaster was trying to say?
I think she did. And the conversation was like a really awkward one. I mean, it was like, that I walk funny, and I wasn't aware that I walked funny, and that was literally one of the things. And like I said, it's something that's stuck in my mind. And obviously at school down here, I had gay jokes and things like that. Again, really early on, didn't really know what it meant. I was just me, as it were. So I think I've been fortunate. I think it's also helped that I'm 6'4" and got brought, so no one really wants to pick a fight with me. But I do have many friends that have suffered the most horrific abuse, that have been mugged even on tubes in London quite recently.
Really?
Because they're gay, because they might, particularly the way they act or something. Yeah, it happens, and it still happens. And it shouldn't be happening in our world, and it's certainly or in sport, but it does, and that's the sad thing.
Because you think that people might imagine that in 2025 there is no coming out, there is no stigma, there is no shame, and really, the homosexuality, the being gay, the being trans, whatever it is just part of the fabric of society. There's no judgment, there's no fear, there's nothing anymore. And yet you're saying that people are being attacked even now.
Yeah. I mean, this particular person was on a tube in London, and there were some very drunk people that decided he was someone to pick on because he was sitting on his own, and pretty horrific what happened. But like I said, I mean, I think it really does depend where you live in the world and where you are and who you surround yourself with. But it's certainly something that you do see, and I think in sport as well, and particularly in football, you get so much abuse for reasons. People will do things in a football match that they might not do outside, hurling abuse and things like that. So I can understand why people would be scared. But unless and until we get referees or players or whoever it is coming out and saying it is okay, it's normal, there's nothing to be worried about, this isn't going to change.
As a human rights lawyer, do you spend much time defending LGBTQ plus people around the world or in this country?
I mean, I've helped a lot of people. I mean, one of the cases I helped was a lady called Princess Latifah in Dubai who was suffering abuse from her dad.
Yeah.
And I help a lot of people that are LGBTQ in that region, because obviously they want to try and come over here or seek asylum if they can, because their lives are genuinely at risk. So, yeah, I mean, I do. And a couple of quite high profile people from the royal family who in Dubai that tried to come over as well. So it is shocking when you see countries like in the Middle East, like Dubai, particularly when you look at the fact that they literally own Manchester City.
Yes,
something like that is illegal and an imprisonable offence.
And does that mean that you have views on people who go on holiday to places like that and think that they are, the food's great, the beaches are fabulous, the shopping malls are terrific, you can even, slide down a ski slope in one of them, why would you not want to have a fantastic holiday there? We see people on holiday there all the time. Does it make you think twice about that whole thing?
One of the things that winds me up quite a lot, actually, is when I see celebrities go there, when you see Elton John going there with his husband and their kids, promoting it, and you see like Ricky Martin, you see these people that should know better and should be highlighting the very bad things that happen there, yet they're promoting it. I mean, so it's unfortunate. It's money at the end of the day, isn't it? And that's why these people, promote the country. But that is galling when you see, kind of gay legends, as it were, like Elton John, promoting a country that has technically still the death sentence for being gay.
I mean, over the years, the phrase "in the closet" was used quite commonly, sort of common parlance. It meant that someone gay who hasn't come out, and they kind of hoping that nobody realises. They feel as if they're sort of undercover. Their whole life is clandestine. It's not their real life. Sometimes they're married to somebody of the opposite sex, and they're kind of projecting a whole kind of false personality, which is alien to their entire being. And it must have been unbelievably difficult to live that kind of a life. Do you think in this country we've pretty much obliterated that kind of life now, or do you think there are still people even today in Great Britain doing that?
Yeah, Vanessa, I think we've come a very long way, but I don't think we've obliterated it. It would be a perfect world where no one has to announce who they love, who they don't love, or anything like that. People just are. That would be the most perfect world, that it's not a big issue if someone is gay or they're not, or what colour they are, what religion. We don't have to announce that. We are just us. And I think, we're a long way off that, but we've become a very, very long way, over the last kind of 10, 20 years, I think, which is great. It's absolutely fantastic. But there are so many areas of the world that don't have those things. And you see that. I mean, if you remember when the Qatar had the Olympics, there was a lot of issues on whether or not gay football fans could actually go to Qatar. Were they going to be safe? I mean, the Qataris said yes, they would be, and ultimately, I think they were. But we've come far, but there's an awful long way to go.
David Haigh, thank you very much indeed for joining me.